He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
It used to be one of those slightly taboo topics.
Money wasn't talked about when I was growing up.
I'm not really sure if I learned to give a lot about finances because I don't think that's something we talked about.
And although it's more out in the open these days, we probably all still have a lot to learn about managing money.
I never really had any financial literacy growing up, so I kind of just had to teach myself.
Money was stressful because we didn't really have any.
Kia ora, I'm Katy Gosset, and welcome to Thrift. We're taking a slightly different approach in this episode. Christmas is looming. Many of us will spend more time with our families. It got me thinking about the kind of money tips, or lack thereof, that we got from our families. I've also been thinking that our show Thrift is all about saving money, but most of us live with our families or other people. So what happens when those people under the same roof as us aren't on the same page about money and how to spend or save it? That can obviously be stressful, and it can also really affect our efforts to be thrifty. So this episode is about family finances. Our saying is, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. That idea that we tend to do what we learnt from our parents. Or do we? I mean, sure, when it comes to finances, sometimes that apple sticks around.
Probably from my father. He always made sure I had a good understanding of, it doesn't come easily and you need to look after it.
My mum's a big person on having different bank accounts in your app. So savings, rainy day funds, bills.
Do you do that?
I do that, yeah.
But sometimes the apple rolls a long way away and we don't want to do what our parents did.
No, my parents are terrible with money. You know how you might go to your parents and ask them for money? For me, it's the other way around, when parents are can I have some money?
So our first tip to get everyone in the house in agreement money-wise is to understand our own financial values, starting with that first influence from our parents.
I think kids do pick up messages from their parents, even if they're not ever made explicit.
That's Susan Edmonds, RNZ's money correspondent.
Sometimes your parents have attitudes about money that just become part of your own thinking, maybe without even questioning it.
Susan's been a journalist for most of her working life. She started out covering social issues, but then moved to financial journalism. And when you think about it, money is one of those things that affects just about every social issue.
Money and how you use it and who has it and who doesn't have it had really big impact on your life, maybe even more than most other factors.
She wanted to cut through the jargon and demystify the subject for other people.
I failed school C maths and yet I manage fine, so anyone can do it, I reckon.
So what were the first money lessons or thoughts about money that she learned from her parents?
I would say we probably didn't talk about money a lot. They talked to me about the decisions that they were making sometimes, but I would never have known how much they had in a bank account.
That approach has probably changed a bit these days.
I don't think it's as taboo to talk about money as it used to be. I don't know if you'd have had a money correspondent like me in the past.
Even if we're talking about it more now, as we've heard, those first ideas that we have about money tend to come from our parents. So again, part of tip 1 in working out what we think financially is sifting through those early beliefs, working out which ones were good and which ones we should ditch.
We all grow up with lots of weird habits from our families, don't we? And it's hard to change them. But I think acknowledging them is the first thing, just knowing that you might have these thoughts because of how you were raised.
But then, as we make our way in the world, Susan recommends really examining every financial choice.
Am I making this decision because of some belief that I hold for no relatively good reason, or is there another driving force for it? And just, I suppose, slow it down a bit.
So analysis is good, but sometimes developing our money beliefs comes after a bit of a financial fright.
Through no fault of Mum's, when we were younger and we didn't have much money, she got a visa to pay for basic things, and then it took a long time to pay that off.
Susan's never really had what she calls a rock bottom financial moment, but as a student she got a $1,000 overdraft and a credit card with a $500 limit.
I definitely maxed those out really fast.
She wasn't earning much at the time and had to take a second job to finally pay the debt back off.
I really didn't want to get back in that situation again because it feels really kind of powerless if you don't have that resource, I guess, to lean on.
So we've watched our parents, analysed the messages we got when we were kids, maybe had a financial hiccup or two, and we emerge more or less as adults with our own financial values.
There was always this layer of stress around money. So I never ever wanted to be in debt.
I realised fairly early on that no one else was going to hand me a lot of money, so I had to go out and earn my own.
So you formed some ideas about money. Tip 2 is around how to maintain or possibly adapt your financial approach when the next milestone comes along and you get together with someone else. How's that going to go?
Well, you've got to work on it because some people, when they get together, they come from totally different backgrounds.
You kind of have to be open about what your priorities are, money-wise. And I guess if you don't really share the same view, it can be hard to get that harmony.
Marital harmony or couples harmony, I'm sure we'd all like to achieve that. But it can be tricky if you find you don't have the same financial values.
Often we don't even realise the sorts of attitudes that we hold until we examine them when they collide with someone else's.
Usually the biggest collision happens when you put a spender and a saver together. And sometimes it's the spender who gets hit the hardest.
They're having to sacrifice everything to meet some saving goals that maybe they're not even that on board with. That seems to be a major issue. Just that mismatch of money personalities is the biggest problem.
And it shouldn't necessarily mean that the saver gets to make the rules.
Because I think sometimes people think, oh, she's better with money because she doesn't spend as much. And so she gets to set all this.
In other words, it's a partnership. So one person can't call all the shots.
It has to be something that you can both live with because money is a thing, a commodity, I guess, that you use for your life. And so you do have to find a medium. You can't just cling to one person's or the other point of view.
So this is where good communication comes in.
If you can talk early on about what your goals are and what your habits are and any kind of issues that you can see popping up for you,
then you can get into the nitty-gritty of what gets spent on what.
Some couples I know have a budget where they have this part for us, this part for you, this part for me. And that maybe gives them a bit more flexibility to juggle those different personalities.
The other option is not sharing money with your partner. Susan reckons managing finances separately can work.
I think if you're coming into a relationship later in life, if you've got different obligations and things like that, it can make sense to keep it apart.
But we do hear of instances of financial infidelity, where people hide assets and bank accounts from their partners.
I think it's totally fine to keep money to yourself, but I do think you shouldn't be actively hiding it unless you've got a really good reason.
And she doesn't believe one person's needs should be prioritised above the rest of the family.
I have heard of situations where one of them's not working and one is, and the one who's working expects to be able to pay for all the want while the one who's not working is struggling through for the needs. And I don't think that's a good situation. It should be open and honest, and so some financial fidelity is important.
But
sexually transmitted debt is the other thing that people need to watch for.
So you're thinking, what? Yes, you did hear that right. Sexually transmitted debt is not a nasty disease, but like she says, still not something very good.
You can pick up debt from a dodgy relationship. The partner will take out a loan and say, could you be a guarantor? Could you put your name on the loan? And then the relationship breaks up and you're left with a debt. And that's not something that is ideal either.
Susan believes the best way for couples to move forward together is to set shared goals.
You don't really want to make sacrifices or make changes unless you know why. So I think if you're trying to achieve something, whether saving something nice or just trying to get back on track, being able to articulate why you're doing that and how you're going to work together to get there is probably going to be a good first step.
You should be on the same page or you'll find out very early on that there's trouble in the relationship.
I mean, we live together and I feel like we've been pretty realistic about spending and what our expectations are for each other.
There might be a bit of negotiating.
He likes to buy his car parts and his silly little toys for his car, and I like to buy clothes, so it's a lot of balancing to kind of find that good middle ground. Yeah.
Equal sacrifices. Sometimes she wants something I don't like and the other way around. It's balancing each other out.
Now, tip 3, once you've got those different money personalities working together in harmony, the next step is, what do you tell your children if or when they come along? Your own family tree, as it were. How do you want those apples to fall?
It's definitely a challenge. I have kids of my own now and they have some lofty ideas of what we could spend money on. So it's definitely good to get everyone on the same page.
Once again, Susan advocates good communication on a daily basis and talking about everything.
Yeah, I think so. Kids have an unending capacity to embarrass me. So I think I talk to them about pretty much everything and just hope that nothing gets repeated to the wrong person.
And generally, those kind of conversations that we might think of as awkward or uncomfortable will actually benefit our children.
There's nothing that I'd be too embarrassed about talking to my kids about in regards to money, just kind of opening it up, being like, this is what it is. It's not good or bad, it just is, and this is how we're managing it.
Setting them up to do a supermarket shop is a good way to start.
Give the kids your phone with the calculator and they can add up as you go along what you're spending to make sure you keep within the budget.
And if they're kept in the loop about the household budget, then they understand the financial decisions we're making.
Oh, we'd like to have a holiday, but to do that we need to cut back on blah, blah, blah. Yeah, and I think just talking about what's coming into the house, what's going out.
I think it is an important thing to talk about and to show children how to live within your means.
Once they've seen how the household operates, Susan recommends giving them a small sum of money to manage themselves or make them earn it through chores. And if they want something, they need to save for it themselves. She also manages a long-term savings account for her children.
So that they can see that building over time. And that hopefully is getting the next kids through that a little bit saved often will add up.
We can sometimes think that the amounts of money children put into their accounts are small, but Susan points out that the younger they are, the better placed children are to take advantage of compounding interest.
Which can deliver them really significant investment outcomes if they can make the most of it. I think so many people don't realise how much they could achieve if they started when they were young.
Once children have the basics and maybe some savings in their bank account, it's time to get them investing.
You can set them up with something like a Sharesies account. That can be quite a good way to learn about how investments work.
And then there's KiwiSaver, even though the government no longer offers its $1,000 kickstart.
Probably less compelling now that kickstart's not there, but it is an option. And it can be quite a low-fee way to get exposure to investment.
Part of talking to your children about money and being upfront is discussing the things that didn't work out.
We recently put quite a lot of money down with a company that then went bust and we've lost all that money, and my kids still like to go around to everyone saying, we've been scammed. So they've definitely got the message that things don't always go to plan.
And if you're finding it hard to navigate, there is advice available.
If you're in trouble, the financial mentor network can be really helpful because they're the ones who come along and try and help you do a budget and help you get out of hardship. And that's a really awesome resource.
So, time for a recap. Remember, you're not defined by what you learnt about money as a child. Maybe you learnt some great habits. But if not, analyse what you did get in the way of advice and challenge yourself to work out if it's just a habit, just what you've learned, or if it's actually working for you. If you need help, financial mentors are available. Talk about your money personality with your partner and set some shared goals that can accommodate both personalities. Accept that money can be spent and someone who saves doesn't get to call all the shots. Separate funds are okay, but be honest about what you have. Be open too with your children when it comes to money. Give them a small amount to manage or invest and encourage them to save. The younger they start earning compound interest, the better set up they'll be. Above all, keep talking. Include your whole family in your financial conversations and let them share and understand both mistakes and successes. Next time on Thrift, Christmas is coming and I'll be hitting the op shops with some financial mentors. We've got a bunch of tips on gift ideas and Christmas food so you can navigate the season that's meant to be merry whilst keeping your budget intact. For that episode and others, follow and listen to Thrift on your favourite podcast app. Many thanks to my guest in this ep, RNZ's money correspondent, Susan Edmonds. This podcast was produced and presented by me, Katy Gosset. It was mixed by Alex Harmer, and Tim Watkin is the executive producer of podcasts and series. If you have a tip to share that could help someone else, email us at thrift@rnz.co.nz. Thanks for listening. Ka kite.